Hey there, science fans! Bill Nye here. Today we're going to talk about something that every single living thing on Earth has in common. Tiniest little amoeba, biggest blue whale, that houseplant, sitting on your windowsill. We're talking about reproduction. Now, what in the world does that big word even mean? Reproduction is simply the process of making more of your own kind. It's how life creates new life. It's not just about having babies. It's the fundamental biological instruction that tells a species, hey, let's keep this show going. It's the ultimate encore, ensuring that the story of life continues from one generation to the next. Imagine you have a favorite recipe for chocolate chip cookies. If you never share that recipe or make more cookies, eventually they'll all be gone. Reproduction is nature's way of passing down its recipes. The genetic recipes, that is. A dog has puppies that grow up to be dogs, not cats. An oak tree drops acorns that grow into new oak trees, not pine trees. This process ensures that the unique characteristics and instructions for being a certain kind of organism are passed on, creating a continuous chain of existence that stretches back millions, even billions of years. It's the most amazing copy and continue feature you've ever seen. This incredible ability is what separates living things from non-living things. Your toy car can't make a baby toy car. A rock can't split in half to create two new smaller rocks. But a bacterium can. A flower can. You can. This is the spark, the very engine of life itself. It's the reason our planet is teeming with such a dazzling diversity of creatures and plants, all participating in this grand, ongoing cycle. So why is reproduction such a big deal? I mean, for an individual organism, it takes a lot of energy. Think about it. A bird has to build a nest, lay eggs, and then spend weeks feeding its hungry chicks. A plant has to pour resources into making flowers, nectar, and seeds. It seems like a lot of work. The reason it's so incredibly important comes down to one simple, powerful idea: survival of the species. An individual organism like you or me or a fruit fly has a limited lifespan. We're born, we live, and eventually our time is up. But the species? That's a different story. For a species to continue existing, it has to replace the individuals that are lost. It's a numbers game, really. If a population of, say, rabbits doesn't produce enough new bunnies to replace the ones that get old or become a fox's dinner, that rabbit population will shrink and eventually disappear. Reproduction is the only way to keep the population numbers stable or growing, ensuring that the species as a whole can withstand the tests of time and the challenges of the environment. It's the spark, the very engine of life itself. It's the biological process that allows populations to grow, to adapt, and to survive over vast stretches of time. Without reproduction, any species would be a one-generation wonder, a flash in the pan that appears and then vanishes forever. It's the reason our planet is teeming with such a dazzling diversity of creatures and plants, all participating in this grand ongoing cycle. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty. There are two main strategies for reproduction, and the first one is like being your own best friend. It's called asexual reproduction. The A in front of sexual means without. So this is reproduction that happens without a partner. It only requires one parent. A single parent can produce offspring genetically identical to itself. Think of it like making a perfect photocopy. The parent basically clones itself to create the next generation. It's a very efficient, very fast way to make many copies when conditions are right. There are a few cool ways this happens in nature. One common method is called binary fission. It just means splitting in two. This is what bacteria do. A bacterium grows, copies its DNA, then splits down the middle into two identical cells. They can do it fast. Some divide every 20 minutes. One bacterium could become over 1 billion in about 10 hours. That's serious multiplication. It's a simple, effective strategy for taking over a new environment quickly. Another type is budding. Imagine a mini-you growing off your arm, then popping off as a smaller clone. That's budding. Yeast do this. Hydra do this. Plants do asexual reproduction too. Strawberry plants send out long stems called runners across the ground. Alright, if asexual reproduction is a solo act, then sexual reproduction is a duet. This requires two parents or two different sets of genetic information. In sexual reproduction, two specialized cells, gametes, come together. These gametes are the egg cell and the sperm cell. The egg is usually larger and non-moving. The sperm is much smaller and can move. The human reproductive process is all about bringing one of these sperm cells and one of these egg cells together. This process, called internal fertilization, happens inside the female's body, which provides a safe, controlled environment. The journey for a sperm cell is an incredible marathon. During reproduction, hundreds of millions of sperm are released into the female's reproductive tract, but only one can fertilize the egg. They must travel through the uterus and into the fallopian tubes, where the egg is usually waiting after being released from the ovary. It's a long and difficult journey, and only the strongest and fastest sperm will make it. When a single sperm successfully penetrates the outer layer of the egg, a change occurs in the egg surface that prevents any other sperm from getting in. At that moment, fertilization is complete. The genetic material from the sperm and the egg fuse together. Once fertilization happens, we have a zygote. This single cell contains a complete set of 46 chromosomes and holds all the instructions needed to build a whole new person. This single cell contains a complete set of 46 chromosomes, 23 from the mother's egg and 23 from the father's sperm. This unique combination of DNA holds all the instructions needed to build a whole new person. This zygote immediately begins to divide and divide and divide again, a process called mitosis. It travels down the fallopian tube and into the uterus, where it will implant itself into the uterine wall. This is the beginning of a pregnancy. Over the next 9 months or so, that single cell will develop into an embryo and then a fetus, growing more and more complex every day. Cells differentiate to form the heart. Cells differentiate to form the brain. Cells differentiate to form the bones. Cells differentiate to form the skin. The developing baby is protected and nourished inside the mother's uterus, receiving oxygen and nutrients through the placenta. It's a remarkable process of development, all guided by that initial genetic blueprint created at fertilization. And it all culminates in the birth of a brand new, completely unique human being, ready to start their own journey of life. Science. The animal kingdom is just bursting with incredible and diverse reproductive strategies. While many animals, like humans, use internal fertilization, the ways they go about it are wildly different. Think of the elaborate courtship dances of birds of paradise. Males showing off spectacular feathers, males performing complex moves to win a female. Deep, booming calls of frogs, males competing with loud croaks. These behaviors are driven by the need to reproduce, leading to beautiful and bizarre features. It's all about proving you have good genes. Not all animals do it internally. Many aquatic animals use external fertilization. Female releases eggs into the water. Male releases sperm nearby to fertilize them. A female salmon, for example, will lay thousands of eggs in a gravelly riverbed. The male will then swim over them to release his sperm. It's a numbers game. Huge quantities of eggs and sperm increase survival chances. Many eggs get eaten or washed away. Some animals can switch strategies. Aphids on garden plants, masters of efficiency. Summer. Plenty of food and warmth. Females reproduce asexually. They give birth to live female clones. Populations explode rapidly. Autumn. Conditions worsen. They switch to sexual reproduction. They produce males and females that mate and lay tough, durable eggs that survive winter. Next generation hatches in spring with fresh genetic diversity. Plants might not be able to walk around to find a mate, but don't you worry. They have some of the most ingenious reproductive strategies on the planet. Most plants we're familiar with, especially flowering plants, use sexual reproduction. The flower is their reproductive organ, and it's a masterpiece of engineering. The male part of the flower, the stamen, produces a fine powder called pollen. Each grain of pollen contains male genetic material. The female part, the pistil, contains the ovules, which are like the plant's eggs. The goal is to get the pollen from a stamen to a pistil, a process called pollination. But how does a stationary plant get its pollen to another plant, which might be meters away? They hire couriers. Plants have evolved to use wind-water animals to do the job for them. Wind-pollinated plants, like grasses and many trees, produce enormous amounts of lightweight pollen that can be carried for miles on a breeze. Other plants produce beautiful, colorful petals and a sugary liquid called nectar to attract animal pollinators: bees, butterflies, birds, bats. As the animal feeds on the nectar, it gets dusted with pollen. which it then carries to the next flower it visits. It's a brilliant partnership where the plant gets pollinated and the animal gets a meal. Once a pollen grain lands on the right kind of pistil, it grows a tiny tube down into the ovule and fertilization occurs. This fertilized ovule develops into a seed. We've mentioned it a few times, but let's really focus on it. Genetic variation. This is the grand prize of sexual reproduction. Imagine a lottery where every ticket is a guaranteed winner, but each prize is slightly different. That's what sexual reproduction does. By combining 50% of the genes from one parent with 50% from another, it creates a new unique combination of traits in the offspring. This shuffling of the genetic deck called recombination. Recombination means even siblings can be very different. One might be tall with brown eyes, while the other is shorter with blue eyes. This variety is crucial for the health and survival of a population. Think about a field of potatoes that are all clones, produced asexually. They are all genetically identical. If a new disease, like a potato blight, comes along that can kill that specific genetic type, it could wipe out the entire field. Every single plant is vulnerable. This actually happened in Ireland in the 1840s, leading to a devastating famine because their potato crops lacked genetic diversity. Now, contrast that with a wild population of plants or animals that reproduces sexually. They have a deep reservoir of genetic diversity. When that same new disease arrives, some individuals might naturally have a gene that makes them resistant to the blight. While many in the population might get sick, the resistant ones will survive. They will then reproduce and pass on their resistant genes to the next generation. This is the fundamental power of sexual reproduction. It provides the raw material for natural selection to act upon. But sexual reproduction is the ultimate insurance policy for a future that is always uncertain. So, as we've seen, reproduction is far more than just a single biological event. It is the continuous thread that weaves the past, present, and future of life on Earth into a single magnificent tapestry. Every organism alive today is a link in an unbroken chain of reproduction that stretches back billions of years to the earliest forms of life. It's the engine that drives the cycle of life, ensuring that for every organism that perishes, a new one can take its place. Without this fundamental process, life on our planet would have been a short-lived experiment that ended long ago. The importance of reproduction extends beyond individual species. It is the foundation of every ecosystem on the planet. The health of a forest depends on trees producing seeds. It depends on insects pollinating flowers. It depends on animals giving birth to young that will grow to play their part. The vibrant life of a coral reef relies on corals releasing their gametes into the water. It relies on fish laying eggs. It relies on algae splitting and growing. Every part of the food web is sustained by this constant renewal of life, from the smallest plankton to the largest whale. Today, understanding reproduction is more important than ever. Human activities like pollution and habitat destruction can interfere with reproduction. From the simplest cell splitting in two to the complex and beautiful rituals of animal courtship, reproduction is the single most vital process for the continuation of life. It is the promise that life makes to itself, the promise of a future. The story of life is a reproductive story, and it's happening all around you all the time.